All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we are getting into one of philosophy's absolute heavyweights, Immanuel Kant. And look, his ideas weren't just some small addition to the conversation. They completely rewired how we even think about what it means to know something. Okay, so Kant's whole deal really kicks off with this one seemingly simple question. I mean, we all just assume we see the world as it really is, right? But Kant comes along and says, hold on a second, what if we don't? What if the world we see is shaped, even constructed, by the very thing we're using to see it, our own mind? You see, before Kant showed up, philosophy was kind of stuck. I mean, for centuries, you had these brilliant thinkers just going back and forth, debating these huge questions. God, the soul, the universe. But they weren't really getting anywhere. They were building these incredible arguments that were, magnificent, but totally unprovable, just pure speculation. And this dead end, it actually has a name: metaphysics. This is the part of philosophy that tries to grapple with stuff that's way beyond our physical senses. Anything we can't touch or see or measure. So these philosophers were building these unbelievably complex, super logical arguments about God and the soul and the universe. But here's the catch, the big problem. There was no way to test them. You couldn't verify any of it with actual experience. They were like these beautiful, intricate castles made of pure logic, but built on thin air. So Kant comes along and proposes something totally radical. He uses this awesome metaphor. He says we need to put reason itself on trial. Think about that. Instead of just using our reason to go out and figure out the world, he says we first have to turn the spotlight back on our reason. We got to figure out what it can actually do, and maybe more importantly, what it can't do. Okay, so how does he do this? Well, Kant's first major move is to draw a really clear line in the sand for all human knowledge. And it all starts with one thing: experience. And this quote right here, it was a total game changer. Kant is basically saying that any real, genuine knowledge has to start with our senses. Without that raw data from the world, without experience, sure, you can think about stuff, you can believe things, you can speculate all day long, but you can't truly know it. And that's the key distinction he's making. Look, you can sit and think about something like the immortality of the soul forever, but you can't ever know it in the same way that you know that cup of coffee sitting right there on your desk. Why? Because you can't see, touch, or taste a soul. Okay, but here's the big twist. This is where things get really, really interesting. Kant says that even this experience, the very thing we need for knowledge, isn't some pure, direct pipeline to reality. Nope. Our mind is in there, actively shaping what we perceive. So let's take a green apple. Simple question. What color is it? I know, it sounds obvious, right? It's green. But for Kant, digging into how you actually see that color green, well, that reveals something incredible about how your mind operates. So think about what's actually happening here. Light hits the apple. The apple's skin absorbs some light waves and reflects others. In this case, the ones we call green. That light hits your eye, your brain processes the signal, and boom, you perceive green. The mind-blowing part is this: the greenness isn't in the apple. The apple just reflects light. The color green is an experience your brain creates. And this gets to Kant's huge insight. Your mind isn't just a passive camera recording whatever's out there. No, it's more like an operating system. It has its own built-in software, its own frameworks that actively filter and organize all the data coming in from your senses. And it does this before you're even aware of it. And for Kant, the two most fundamental pieces of this mental software are space and time. Get this, he argued that space and time aren't things out there in the world that we discover. Instead, they are the very structure of our perception. They're like the pre-installed apps on your phone. You literally can't experience anything except through the framework of space and time. Now, all of this leads to Kant's most famous idea, what he himself called his Copernican Revolution. And it's a perfect name for it because it completely flips our whole understanding of how we relate to the world. Okay, check this out. Before Kant, everyone just assumed that for us to know something, our minds had to sort of bend and shape themselves to match the object out there in the world. Kant flipped that completely on its head. He said, no. The world we experience has to conform to the built-in structure of our minds. Just like Copernicus put the sun at the center instead of the earth, Kant put us, the subject, at the center of our own experience. The official name for his theory is transcendental idealism, which sounds complicated, but it boils down to something like this. Kant says there are basically two versions of the world. There's the world as it really is all by itself. He called this the noumenal world. The thing is, we can never know that world directly. Then there's the world as it appears to us, filtered through our minds. He called this the phenomenal world. That's it. That's the only world we ever get to know. And this quote really nails it. When he says a priori, he just means before experience. So think about a rule like every event has a cause. We tend to think that's a law of the universe that we discovered. Kant says, not quite. That rule is actually part of our mental software that we impose on the world to make it make sense. We're not finding it out there, we're putting it in there ourselves. So what are the consequences of all this? What's the big takeaway? Well, the aftermath of Kant's revolution was just massive. It didn't just change philosophy, it changed how we think about science and even about ourselves. Basically, reason got knocked off its pedestal. After Kant, you could no longer see reason as this all-powerful key that could unlock every secret of the universe. Instead, he showed that our reason has very clear, built-in limits. It's an incredible tool, for sure, but it only works within the boundaries of what we can actually experience. So really, Kant's legacy is this huge turn inward. He forced philosophy to stop just looking out at the world and to start looking at the person doing the looking. He showed us that our knowledge is never pure. It's always shaped by our own minds, and that idea laid the groundwork for how we study knowledge today. Ultimately, he forced us to realize that before we can even try to understand the universe, we have to first understand ourselves. And that leaves us with this huge, lingering question, doesn't it? If our reason is limited, how can we trust anything we know? But see, Kant's goal wasn't to make us doubt everything. It was to give our knowledge a more honest, a more solid foundation. He isn't telling us we can't know anything. He's telling us that true knowledge has to start with knowing the limits of the knower, with knowing ourselves.